I'm Scott Bowman. I am the creator who works under the name Scott B. Lego, or also ideaBRICKworks. Today I'm going to do a review of the Creator Series Lego Ford Mustang on set number 10265 with 1,471 parts. I've been wanting to build this for a while, and I just had rotator cuff surgery, so this has kind of been the joke with my wife was that this is my occupational therapy. So I am learning to do a lot more with my left hand. I'm going to focus more on the build itself. I also have some photos that will get inserted that will also do some of the details, but I'm going to focus on this instead of my face. Okay, so here it is. Here is the model. And I think I said this in an earlier video, but you know, when I look at these Creator Series sets, besides the complexity and the build techniques and all the things you can learn from them, this really harkens back to when I was a kid and I was into plastic models, except no glue, no paint fumes, no ruined finishes, and the fact that if you drop this, you have the chance of putting it back together again. So the pleasure of building this is exactly the same as when I was doing models. The neat thing is that this is the gift that keeps on giving, correct? So you can actually do this again. This set has some kind of fun features that I'll go into. I have no particular order, and I'm not being very organized on this, but just to give you an overview, it is the Ford Mustang. It's kind of a celebration of the history of the Mustang, one of the very first and foundational muscle cars. It was a very radical change from what Ford was doing up to that point. And this particular car is based on, I think the book talks about 1967, the Fastback, which I really love this particular iteration. And if you look at the newer Mustangs, the new ones that have come out in the last really 10 years or so, they are all much more modeled towards this. Had a lot of fun features. Ford, over the years, and again, knowing my background with motorsports and racing and cars, Ford in this era, in that the 60s and going into the 70s, their partnership with Carroll Shelby, they came up with some foundational engines, the 289, the 350, the 427. These are all iconic, classic engines that really defined horsepower and performance in their day. So that part's really fun. Not that I'm probably ever going to buy a Mustang just because they have other brands, but I certainly respect them, and I really enjoy them when I see them in shows and stuff like that. So here's the model. The model has lots of fun aspects. The working hood. It's got a fairly detailed, it's more of a surface detail. There are some images I can show that show you kind of the foundation. So it's kind of like a half engine top. I do kid that they only have 4 plug wires showing, but it's a neat part, by the way, that made those wires. And it's very, very fun, well done. It does have steering. Let me do it this way. And again, forgive me for my useless right arm right now. So the steering wheel actually does turn the steering wheels. It's a good feature. It's fun. The doors function. There's a little more detail on the inside of the door. It's kind of got this articulated hinge kind of thing. I like this better than some of the Technic versions. It's using a hinge piece and a plate hinge versus some of the Technic pins that are used in some of the other models. So that works pretty well, or works really well. It does have a removable roof, mostly so you can see the fair amount of detail that went into the interior. I thought that was a nice feature. It really did it allows you to see much more inside of it. I did want to point out, there's a detail image as well, but here is the radio, and it's fun. At the time that was just AM radio. They didn't really have anything else at that point. Although it's funny, the other day I saw something that somebody was actually creating a record player that came out of the glove compartment at some point, thinking that was going to be the pinnacle of audio quality. Again, both doors work. There's another fun thing. Hopefully this will show up. There's a sticker on the back of the rearview mirror showing a car following the Mustang. I'm sure it's a little homage that, of course, it's following, not leading. But if you think about the Bullet Chase, which this is a classic car, it'd be in the green, that it was in front. He was chasing a Charger through the streets of San Francisco. It does have a working trunk, and there's different things back here that can go into it. It's kind of got a unique aspect to it. This is one of the first Lego sets I can remember that has mods that you can make that they provided. We all make modifications to our kits and what we do. And I'm sure I'm going to be doing some to this one. I did one already, I'll tell you about in a moment. But this one came with them. So in this case, I'm showing it with the optional spoiler and the splitter. While I think the shapes are good, this is a little too tall because of a change I made. They're fun and they're well done. I do think the car sits just a little too high. And it will take a lot of work, but I'd like to lower it one plate. I think that would put the wheels into the wheel wells a little better, although the wheel wells are not open in a way. It's kind of a unique way that they get this outside edge of the fender. It's basically, there's a brick plate back there. And it's got things like the hood comes out because you can build the optional blower that can then go into the hood, and you can add a nitrous bottle to the trunk and make it more of a dragster. And the way to give it that, and the headers, I think they're kind of silly, but not unknown at the time for dragsters, and that's where they would go. It has this unique jacking mechanism. Hopefully I can show you a couple of more detailed images of those. But let's see, again, using what I can do, turn it around this way. Okay, so the interesting thing, a dragster wants much more weight transfer to the rear, and that's why you see a lot of dragsters that seem to lean forward. Gravity is a great tool. And so they've got this jacking mechanism on the back, and there's a finned brick back there that gets it up to about there. So it gives it a whole different stance, much more of a dragster stance, that kind of thing. I thought that it's unique. I will probably, when I do my lowering, I will probably move that a little bit and probably get rid of it because I'm going to get it more to a road race kind of thing. There are some pretty cool new bricks that came out with it. One is there's some really good printed brick. So you'll see in this case the GT. Hopefully we can show you a couple of inserts. This stripe, the small stripe, is actually a printed brick. Very unique grill. The grill with the pony is a printed brick, which is obviously better than a sticker in that case. I never knew that the frame around the pony, they call it the corral. And so in this case, it's got the corral along with it. But I did want, the grill is really some unique building techniques in order to get that kind of curve and yet the metallic of it. Pretty fun, pretty well done. I really like that. You know, one of the mods I was talking about, one thing I'm not real pleased with is the hood doesn't necessarily sit well. When you're putting plates together, and this is an assembly of plates, basically sandwiched plates, you're not always going to get the curve or even the flatness because there's a little bit of spring to those bricks, and I'm not real happy with that. Okay, so one of the mods that I did make was this spoiler is attached with a couple of angle pieces that allow it gives it some adjustability, but it also is a way to, in a way, snot brick, even though it's not, stud's not on top. But it was also on the surface, and so when it would close, you'd see one of the gray plates in there. And so I modified it some so that it now closes much better. I think it has a better look back here, that type of thing. Oh, the other fairly unique piece is this blue long. It's a 2x10 brick that has a slope to it, a curve, as in the Lego speak. And that's going to be a barrier, because the first thing I saw when I saw this kit is there's a couple of classics paint schemes, actually several. One would be the green of Bullet. You know, so having a green Mustang fastback, I'm sure would be something that people would love to build, and we'll have to come up with a different way to make some of these big curves. It's the same piece that makes that fun vent, which I don't think is functional on the rail car, or at least at this generation. But it looked cool because, you know, airplanes were in, and jets were in, and the NACA duct, the idea of bringing air in, was a big deal. So I'm sure that was more of a styling thing than it was a real vent. Today we would do that because we want to get air into the rear brakes and actually air out from underneath the car. So you'll actually see that feature used even if it's a front engine car, and that type of thing. But I digress. The other one was a really fun series where Hertz had these, and you could rent one, and they were black with white stripes, and they were a full-on, I think it was the it'd be the 350 large block, and I don't know that it worked out well for them because I think a lot of them got rented and then drag raced and, you know, probably abused pretty dramatically. There aren't very many that exist anymore, but it's an awesome paint job, this kind of the black with the gold stripe. The other one would be the inverse of this, which is the America, when it would race internationally, our colors were blue and white being the predominant with blue stripes. I think maybe the first one was Cunningham Classic Racer in Le Mans, and that was the paint scheme that was kind of not assigned so much as adopted by the American teams. And you know, British Racing Green, that kind of has always been there. Obviously, Italy is red. So there's some colors that have gone that are kind of country oriented. So again, any of those would be real fun, but without having that piece. So it'll be interesting to see what colors get made by that. Just a couple of things. You know, one thing that I do, and we'll show you a picture, I put the wheels on as soon as the axles appear. I do it with Speed Champions, I do it with anything I do. And it kind of harkens back to when you would be building your, you know, restoring a car, building a car, and man, I tell you what, you just want to get the wheels on it, and because it gives it a whole nother stance. You feel like you're making a lot of progress, those types of things. So I'll show you where, but instead of like, and it's a fairly thick book, by the way, but instead of like adding instruction 300 or somewhere in there, I had the wheels on at about 69, somewhere in that, the late 60s within the book. So I highly recommend it. I think it was I think it's fun. That's the way I do it. Printed parts. There are some kind of fun printed parts. There is a pony, and we'll hopefully show you a little close-up of it. But it's the basically it'd be the whole oil fill on top of the radiator or on the valve cover, and it has a pony printed on it. The front is a pony symbol, and then of course these stripes on the bottom are printed brick. The stickers aren't bad. You know, the stickers are things like the license plate, the rear badge, the GT badge. Those are things. You know, while I've got you looking at the back end, I really loved the way they did the taillights. The taillights have always been very distinctive on the Mustang, and these kind of vertical stripes. I kind of wish they would, you know, strobe showing you which way. I don't know that the Department of Transportation ever allowed that, but I think it would have been cool. I just like it. It's a full-on snot technique, and with the sandwiched 1x2 trans with the transparent plus the gray brick. So I thought that was kind of a fun way to do it. Just talking a little bit about the engine again, and the book made a point of this, and I'm not exactly sure why, but down in the base of this engine is a 2x4 blue brick. And, you know, blue is always the color of Ford. It's kind of been known, you know, the blue oval. I won't use some of the other terms, those that may not like Fords as much as others. But anyway, it does have the foundation of a 2x4 brick. And, you know, the battery, I thought it was kind of interesting that they put a red cross and a black. Those are axles down through the parts. That was kind of fun. Another one that's a little fun, and it's hard to see in this image, hopefully we can get a close-up, is the radiator overflow and fill expansion tank, basically. You know how they're always that weird plastic, and of course then you get the blue radiator fluid in there. It's a glow-in-the-dark brick, so it has that same look. It does have a couple of rubber bands for belts in there. Those are kind of fun, just to give it that idea. I don't know that we'd have white, but at least you can see them. If they were black rubber bands, we wouldn't even be able to see them. They did put, you know, the in-chassis support. You know, Mustang was even though they built it as if it was a frame-on type construction, the Mustang was one of the first that had a kind of subframe assemblies. It was really the start of unibodies. Not pure unibody by any means, but it was one of the first ones. So again, you aren't going to see the frame off version of a Mustang. It's going to be components. You know, you'll see the whole front end can be gone because, you know, the fenders and the hood and all that kind of stuff. And there's a couple times in the build assembly where the whole back is done, which is more typical when you start to see a Mustang come to completion. You'll see that the back doors aren't on it, but, you know, you can tell the structure's there and then nothing on the front because, you know, it's just the engine sitting where it's going to sit. So, in general, I think this is well worth the cost. I can't remember what the cost was right at the moment, but I'm sure you can look it up. It was a fun build, had a lot of good techniques, getting the angle on the windshield. You know, I'm still amazed every time I do it how there are no forced connections. So here you have studs engaged to, I call them grabbers, back down into some angle bricks down there, or hinge bricks. The math is always impresses me with the way you can come up with solutions that fit in a legal fashion. So again, well worth it. I think it was a fun build. I'm looking forward to, if I can find the time. I tend to have these great ideas and then I don't have time to implement them, but I have a few mods I've already thought I'd like to do. I mentioned lowering it. Again, this spoiler needs to be a little less for a kind of a road version, not so much a road race version, but a road version. The spoiler wouldn't be near that aggressive. And then the spoiler, I like it. I might change it just a little bit because as the car gets lowered, I want it to be a little more like that, or be a little less obtrusive. Other than that, I thought it was a fabulous build. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm hoping to do more of these, and look forward to your comments and any questions. And again, this is Scott Bowman with ideaBRICKworks. Go to my website, go to my Facebook page, go to my Etsy page, and you can buy my creations and lots of different stuff. I do have some Speed Champions coming that primarily focused around Porsche. But again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to the next one.